Hello everyone. I wanted to discuss some fits and tactics regarding baiting solo PvP with battlecruisers, specifically attack battlecruisers. I like to work within a fun to ISK ratio. If they're cheap and fun, then I don't mind losing unusual fits. A lot of people get too hung up on an optimal or min-maxing of fits. It's understandable, but not every fight needs to be in the flavor of the month ship with the best fits. There's hundreds of subcaps available. Sometimes the best fights are in ships that people rarely fly, except for the Navy Armageddon because it's terrible in every way. So that leads me to the topic of attack battlecruisers. Sure, we see them often enough in ganking scenarios or maybe some small scale gangs. You rarely hear about solo attack battlecruisers though, which is understandable because they're at a huge disadvantage to smaller ships due to the large weapons they use and also because all of them except the Talos don't have a drone bay. In this video I'm going to mainly be focusing on the Tornado, Naga, and Oracle. I think everyone has a pretty good understanding of what a Talos can do, and to be honest, it's a lot harder to bait in a Talos than it is in a Tornado. People know that a Talos will track you, and it has drones to help against frigates. So there's still some fun fits like the 100 MN Talos, but it just doesn't have the same effect as the other ABCs due to its reputation. So this is the first fit that we'll talk about. This is one of my older 100 MN fit Tornadoes. This is what I used for years when I was in faction warfare. It's a very good fit for baiting in kind of low set conditions. Um, this is before they added the capability to micro jump drive with the ABCs. So you had to be careful of kiters, but as far as actual brawling goes, it's a very good fit, and there's really not any frigate that can counter it. Um, with the 100 MN afterburner going 1400 cold, and then to add to the bait factor, you have a long point. So if there's a kiting frigate, or if you point beforehand, then they'll see that you're not scram. So they'll think that they can get under your guns a lot easier. The other advantage here is that this particular fit, because it's 100 MN, you need to use the dual 425 autocannons for it all to actually fit properly. Um, the nice thing about the 425s is that if you're looking at them from a distance or just using the look at function and you just quickly glance at them, they do appear to be 1400 artillery if you're just not really inspecting them very thoroughly. So that can also help a little bit for when you're dealing with smarter people who actually look at your ship before trying to engage you. So they'll think that you're already fit along with, if you name your ship something like sniper or insta pop or something like that. So it just kind of helps build up that whole bait factor. This first fight is against a dual web tracking disrupted hook bill, which is pretty much almost a perfect counter for this particular fit. This is still the 100 MN Tornado. So the fight starts off where he lands pretty much on top of me. I start burning away and start putting damage on him. And at this point, normally with 100 MN fit, you want to cycle down the AB to not go out of range of them. So I turned it off, at which point he started overheating his afterburner and catching back up to me. Which at that point, then I needed to overheat to actually start beating his velocity, because right now he's at 348, I'm only at 270. However, my maximum afterburner speed with heat is faster than his. And at this point, it looks like his afterburner stops going into overheat, so his speed drops down, and now I am increasing speed and gaining transversal, at which point I'm able to kill him, even with the tracking disruptor on me. It was still a really close fight, especially since I was shield fit and he got me into armor, but even a dual web tracking disruptor hook build could still not counter the 100 MN fit. The next fit with the Tornado is going to be a 10 micro jump drive fit. And actually it's got scram web instead of the long point double web. It's also got an actual active tank, as you have a single medium ancillary rep, and then you have triple bulkheads to give you some actual buffer to work with. So any of you familiar with frigate fights will kind of see a similar relation here with this particular fit. A lot of frigates will go with a triple bulkhead fit and a single rep. Basically the theory or the principle behind it all is that you use your hull as a buffer and then you use the rep to regain or actually extend your buffer. On the Tornado and the Naga, they both use a similar fit. So they have enough cap to sustain the rep for pretty much any fight, so that it doesn't really matter that you don't have a cap booster in that case. The reason why I switched down to a 10M afterburner on these fits is because one, you can fit the MJD, and two, with my experience, a lot of frigate fights, especially where you're baiting, the 100 MN is kind of overkill, just because you're going to be outpacing a lot of these frigates because a lot of them have MWDs, so it's not really needed. And on the few frigates that will counter you, you just have to be aware of them, like the hook bill I just showed you. You're going to probably not want to engage a hook bill in the 10M fit, just because it could be dual web, and any frigate that is dual web is going to counter you. The only exceptions, which aren't really a frigate, is like the Hecate. A dual web Hecate is still slower than your Tornado, plus it is going to have a larger signature, so your guns are still going to be able to track. I find that the MJD is a lot more handy in this situation for brawling with an ABC, just because if you do run across the occasional slicer who actually has a brain and doesn't try and get under your guns, you can just MJD away from them and find another fight. So far I've been using this fit extensively, and I'm liking it a lot better than the 100 MN fit. It has more engagement capabilities. You can actually fight cruisers with it, and you have a lot more escape options available to you. So the first fight in the 10M fit is in faction warfare. I'm actually sitting in a large plex and I have a vengeance warp in on me. So I start burning away to keep it range. Right around 7500 is normally where I keep it on this fit. It looks like the vengeance immediately activates the ADCU as soon as he starts hitting armor. I'm only hitting for like 50 to 30 damage, which is fine. He's not doing a ton of damage, and this is an A-type vengeance fit. But as soon as ADCU goes down, then I'm able to kind of punch through that tank. I mean, these are pretty tanky ships, but once they've got 800 DPS lined up on them, they're going to melt pretty quickly no matter how good your tank is. And again, that kind of goes for any frigate, not just vengeances. So this next fight starts off with me trying to bait an Omen Navy issue. I had actually previously warped to a small plex and he landed about 30 kilometers off of me. So I adjusted my warp in to the next plex at 70. Basically, that would put him right on top of me. I mean, you can even kind of see in local where he was trash talking as I ran away. When I wasn't running away, I was just repositioning so he would land on top of me. So then as the fight progresses, I already had hail loaded, which I know a lot of people might find surprising, but with the dual webs, once you can get transversal on them, then you're hitting for almost 900 DPS. So even though I am taking a lot of damage in this fight, it was actually a really close fight. It was a good fight. But even though it took a little bit of time to get application on, once I did get application, then I was just volleying right through his armor. And then that allowed me to kind of catch up and win the DPS race right there at the end because I was using hail. Again, this shows another good use of the rep and the hull tank, and that's what allowed me to survive through this fight. And it's a similar scenario in this next fight where I have a Stabber Fleet issue warping on me. In this case, I actually just let him burn towards me since most of them are normally brawl fit. So I already have hail preloaded, so I actually start shooting them since I do have the fall off bonus, so it allows me to apply and get some damage in beforehand. And then I just keep them kind of at range because with the Stabber Fleet issue, most of them are either 180 millimeter or 220 fit. So if they're in brawling range, they're not going to have great damage projection, even at 8 or 9 kilometers, just because of autocannons. So that allows me to tank a lot of his damage pretty easily. And then with hail, and once he's actually held down, I can just blow right through his tank. He was actually a dual rep fit, and it just alphaed through his tank. And this is the last fight with the tornado. I was using a similar tactic as I was in the Noman fight, where I was bouncing plexus, trying to get the Stratios to land on top of me, because I knew he was cloaked and he was on field. So I was able to get him to decloak. He tackled me for his Phantasm buddy. I believe the Stratioso made a pretty big mistake here, and he did not put drones on me, which is why I'm able to tank him so easily. If he had put drones on me, I think it would have been another close fight, similar to the Noman fight. Regardless, though, a kill's a kill. I still was able to take down the Stradios, and I was wanting to also fight that Phantasm, but by the time he landed, my charges for the armor rep were low, and I didn't want to risk fighting that with low charges for tanking. This is the pretty much the same fit that I'm using on the Tornado, but on the Naga instead. Again, it's got the same kind of layout with the triple bulkheads, and then the lows is uh, your rep, damage, and DCU. With the Naga, you get an extra mid, so in this case I ended up just adding a tracking computer, both just so I can get more tracking and also have an optimal script if I, for whatever reason, want to shoot farther. You could say it's kind of pointless to have the tracking computer because with the double web afterburner, you're going to maintain transversal on most targets, but I couldn't really think of anything else to put there. I suppose in some cases you could go with a third web, which would definitely help you maintain range on most targets, even possibly like a dual web hook bill, but I still think it'd be pretty close and then you run into a bunch of tracking penalties. As far as the differences between the Naga and the Tornado goes, one, the Naga has a little bit worse cap because of blasters. However, you do end up doing more damage, and you have better tracking even without the tracking computer. And plus, the Naga, I think a lot of people underestimate. It has pretty much the same DPS as a Talos, it just doesn't have drones and it has better range. So with the tracking computer, with the tracking script, you basically have the same tracking as a Talos with more range and more utility. So it's also a really good fit. I really enjoy flying the Naga, and you do more damage. So it's kind of win-win in no matter how you look at it, except for cap in comparison to the Tornado. So in this first fight with the Naga, it's kind of a similar situation to what we've seen before. This retry pilot ends up coming in, and it's actually a scram retry. And he's actually tackle for a frigate gang that has Logi. So that's why he's scram fit. He's probably got a plate so he can get reps. But again, once he gets tackled and I get transversal up, I have to kind of wait through his ADCU. But once that ADCU goes down, then I just blow right through his tank. Um, I would have liked to stay a little bit longer to fight this gang, but again, my rep was already used through, and with Logi on field plus additional coming in, I figured at this point it was just best to bail and regroup. This next fight is against a uh, Crystal Dead Space Worm. So he's got a Dead Space shield booster. He comes in, assuming he's going to get an easy kill. At which point, again, the bait is successful. And like I had mentioned before with the Tornado and also with the Naga, there's really, no matter how much pimp you put in a frigate, it's unlikely it's going to be able to survive 800 DPS easily. So in this case, bait was successful. I was able to get the shield booster out of that kill and pay for another Naga. The last fight with the Naga is against a dual web Hekate, who's actually got a A-type rep. So he lands at 0 on me, and I start burning out to 7,500 or so, um, which in doing so actually kind of puts me out of his damage range. But like I mentioned earlier, even with the Hekate with dual web, they're still slow enough that even an attack battlecruiser can outrange them as long as you're matching their same fit. So if they have dual webs and you have dual webs, you're going to be faster or at least equivalently quicker than them. If they have a single web, you have a single web. Again, you'll probably still be faster or at least be able to maintain range depending on how you time your afterburner. He does a really good job at tanking me. Obviously, he's got the Galente resists, and I'm shooting blasters at him, so it kind of works in his favor. But even then, with the volley amount that I'm doing, I'm still bleeding through to his structure. And at which point, there's just not enough structure left for him to tank anymore, and he does pop. So the last attack battlecruiser I'm going to show you in this video is the Oracle. The fit I'm going to show you, I'd say, is probably not an ideal fit by any stretch. It is definitely a fun fit. That being said, though, I will say that it tracks horribly. um, However, it's still really amusing to outrun like Dramiels and a lot of other fast frigates with it. So basically, you're using a 500 MN battleship micro warp drive, which puts your cold speed at 4,300 meters a second, and your heated speed is about 6,000 meters per second. So again, it's pretty ridiculous for a battle cruiser to go that fast. The lows are set up for both speed and agility. Now, of course, I'm sure you're going to say, well, this thing probably, turns like a boat, and yeah, it does to an extent. But at the same time, if you look at the agility, we're looking at about a 19, we'll just say 20-second align time. If you look at a lot of armor battleships, they're in like the 17 to 18-second range. So basically, you're looking at a battleship that can go 4,300 meters a second in terms of agility. So it's not unusable. It's not like you can't control this at all. It just requires a little bit more finesse. Um, your damage is mediocre, about 550 with Scorch, and range is okay. You do have to kind of downgrade to the lower tier dual heavy pulse lasers, so that kind of hurts your range a little bit. You do get a little bit better tracking, but I mean, large laser tracking is just terrible to begin with. So this is more of a meme fit. You're not going to get a bunch of good fights with it, but if you're in an area where there's a lot of fast frigates, that are using snakes or things like that, then this is a fit that I've used before that can definitely meme some frigates. At the very least, you may not kill them, but you'll leave them scratching their head as to why they couldn't catch an oracle. So the only fight that I got in the Oracle here was, well, I actually had multiple fights, but this is the only one where I actually killed anything. But this starts out where a Sentinel and a Firetail come in on me. I'm actually keeping my speed manually set at about 2600, 2700, which is still pretty fast for an Oracle, but it's not going to immediately make them think there's something wrong. Maybe they just think I have snakes and I'm nano fit. So once the Firetail burns in though, I set my speed back up to the maximum speed, and this Firetail is basically your pure speed fit. I think his lows are like double overdrive nano or something stupid like that. So he's trying to burn in to get me, and I'm faster than him. And at one point, he either sits still or he tries to readjust to just approach. At which point, my lasers finally get tracking, and I'm able to two-shot him and kill him. At which point, once he goes down, I see that the Sentinel is 100 kilometers off roughly, so I turn around and burn straight at the Sentinel. Maybe not the smartest idea, but I was hoping I could try and catch him off guard before he puts TDs on me, which I do at least get one shot off on him where it actually does decent damage. And then I get close and realize my mistake of, oh, well, now he's going to put a bunch of newts on me and I don't have a cap booster. So at that point, I decide to disengage and just overheat, which, again, I'm going to go 6K a second. He's not going to be able to catch up to me in time to repoint me. So by then, my cap is almost dead. So I go ahead and once I'm out of range, I decide just to go ahead and warp off at that point. So this next fit I'm going to show you is actually not an attack battlecruiser. It's just a nano prophecy, and kind of go along with the theme of just cheap, fun fits. They don't need to be optimal fits. You're not going to have not going to solo a fleet with this prophecy. But what it will do is it'll throw a lot of people off guard. So the way I have it fit is set up for speed and max damage and max drone speed. So my drone or my rigs are set up with double drone speed rigs and then double nanos, and then rapid light missiles. So basically, any frigate that thinks you're just a typical, double plate bait prophecy is going to have a bad time because your warriors, your acolytes are doing anywhere from 8 to 9K a second. So anything except maybe fully snaked and linked out garmers, you're going to be able to catch with your drones. Combined with your rapid light missiles, if they hit anyway, depending on how fast the frigate is, it adds up to a lot of damage pretty quickly. Um, you could say, why do you have a newt fit instead of a link? And I think a link is definitely a good argument because you could use it to get more point range, more web range, more speed, whatever you prefer. But just from my personal preference, I prefer to have a newt because no matter how long your web reaches out, no matter how fast you are for a battle cruiser, you're still going to get tackled by something. And so I like to use that newt just to peel tackle off or to help break active tanks. So the fight with the prophecy starts out with me being in a large plex, and the stork kind of comes in with its gang. So it's a stork, a vengeance, logi, and then a 10 MN algos. So I start off trying to kill the stork, and it ends up kind of burning away from me while everyone regroups, and then it burns back in to, once they're all regrouped, then they're all kind of together. So it burns back in, and I try and put damage back on that stork again. The stork is fit with I think it's a C type shield booster, so it's active tanked. Um, and it does a good job here kind of distracting me, and then it also actually ends up boosting my drones off, um, which again is actually another good tactic. I'm happy to see someone do that in factional warfare. So I go ahead and abandon my drones immediately, and right at that point in time, the vengeance burns in, and again, this kind of comes back to having that newt. So I put the newt on them, and I still have missiles left, and I unload my damage drones and just put them on them with a web. It's enough to apply damage and actually kill that vengeance pretty quickly. At which point I immediately switch back over to the Bantam or their Logi and get that off field as quick as I can, just because I don't want it interfering with killing anything. And it had no tank, so it died really quickly. And the next one is on this Algos here. I make a little bit of a mistake here because it's a 10 NM fit. I should have just burned in on top of it so I could put a web on it. And plus my missiles are about to hit reload. So it takes longer than I would have preferred to kill this Algos, and during this time, the Algos, or I should say the Stork, is actually shooting my drones. So I'm even losing damage through that, and not really fully paying attention to my drones here. So if I had just burned in and put a web on them and neutered them, then what drones I did have on field would have been able to kill them a lot quicker. But I go ahead and scoop my drones, launch a full flight of lights so I can get the best application I can, and then at that point in time my missiles are back off reload and he dies. And then from here I think I actually am able to catch a stork a little bit out of position, and I end up burning right towards him. And again, this kind of comes back to me having that newt. So I web him, and then I put newt on him, and then this helps me break that active tank. Combined with my missiles and drones, he starts actually breaking. He tried to get away, but again, because I was sitting right on top of him, he ended up boosting me and all of his drones, and I was able to kill him. So again, it's a fun fit. I wouldn't say you're gonna be able to fight everything, but as far as frigate gangs go, the prophecy and how it's fit here works out really well. And that's pretty much for it for this video. So I'm sure some of you are going to say, look, Stitch, you're just ganking frigates. It's not that hard. Why are you making a whole video on it? And I'd say you're right. This is not a difficult thing to do to gank frigates. However, what you don't see is a preparation to get a lot of these fights. As far as as far as these frigate pilots realize, I'm just artillery fit. So I need to do everything I can to make them believe that, right up to the point that I scram web them or, bait them with any of these other ships that I've shown you, that I'm doing exactly what they think I'm doing as far as my fit goes. So this includes, trying to bait them to where they can't use a look at function, so I'm bouncing plexes or I'm bouncing gates at 100 kilometers, making sure I don't sit too long on grid, not shooting them at the 20 to 40 kilometer mark so they don't realize that I'm actually autocannon fit or blaster fit or whatever the case may be. Um, so there's a lot of preparation there. Again, not saying that these are the best fights you've ever seen, and that's not what I'm trying to portray them as. I'm just trying to show that there's a lot more fights out there than just trying to fight the blob or fight these huge fleets, and just go out and have fun with whatever fit you feel like making. You don't need to follow the meta to a T. You don't need to always fly an Orthrus or a Nomen or whatever's a popular ship. Just fly what's fun to you and get fights and see what happens. And that's it for this video. So thanks for watching.